Hey, I'm Amber. I've always been the type of person who focuses hard on my goals, maybe a bit of a nerd, but I'm also not afraid to speak my mind when something feels off. I just moved here, and today was finally my first day at the new school. So far, things were going pretty great. I was standing in the polished lobby, and I could hardly believe that the principal himself was taking the time to give me a personal tour. He kept showering me with praise, telling me that with my impressive grades and academic history, I was going to fit in perfectly there. He seemed really proud to have me. Then, he introduced me to the boys standing right next to him. He patted the guy on the shoulder and said his name was Leo, his son. He told me Leo was another top student and would be the one to show me the rest of the ground. The principal gave me a warm smile and then headed back to his office. As soon as his dad was gone, Leo's vibe changed. He slowly looked me up and down from head to toe, then gave me this smug smile and winked at me. I was so caught off guard, I couldn't tell if he was genuinely trying to be friendly or if he was actually checking me out already. We started walking through the halls, and eventually, we stopped in front of the library. The smell of old paper and silence drifted out, and Leo turned to me, waggling his eyebrows in this really cheesy way. He suggested that maybe we could spend some time studying there together sometime. I wasn't really feeling his energy, so I looked away and told him as politely as I could that I actually preferred studying by myself. Just at that moment, I noticed another guy walking past us toward the librarian's desk. He had this book tucked under his arm, and I have to admit, he had that whole cool bad boy look down perfectly. He just had this aura that made me curious. I narrowed my eyes to see what he was holding and realized it was a book called The Orion Mystery. I was so impressed because I've been obsessed with ancient stuff lately too. Leo must have caught me staring because his voice turned really bitter. He told me that if he were me, he'd stay far away from guys like that. He claimed the guy's grades were pathetic and said he probably only came to the library to take a nap. Then he had the nerve to say the guy was way below my league, while he was much more suitable for someone like me. To top it off, he gave me another flirtatious wink. I'd had enough of his arrogance. I looked him right in the eye and told him I appreciated the tour, but seeing how smug and scornful he was toward other people proved he wasn't suitable for me at all. I didn't even wait for a response. I just turned around and walked away, leaving Leo standing there looking absolutely stunned. I managed to find my classroom easily enough on my own, even without Leo hanging around to help. When I walked in, I spotted my desk immediately. There was absolutely no missing. It was covered with a huge, colorful bouquet of flowers with my name on it, and a big welcome hamper overflowing with all kinds of candy. I found a note and realized it was actually from the principal. I mean, I knew he was happy to have me at the school, but I couldn't help but think this was all a bit much for a first day. I felt a little embarrassed by the attention, so I decided to share the flowers and all the candy with my new classmate. It ended up being a really nice way to break the ice and get to know everyone a little better. Everything was going smoothly until lunchtime. Two sweet girls named Jane and Ellie walked me to the canteen, and the smell of various foods filled the air as they showed me how to use my student QR code to get a tray. But as soon as I got my food, they pointed toward a specific group of students sitting over by the large windows and told me I should go sit with them instead. I was so confused and asked them why I couldn't just stay and eat with them. Jane looked really sad as she told me that I simply wasn't one of them, and then they walked away to join a different group. I stood there for a second, wondering what on earth they meant by that. I looked around the canteen and noticed something weird. There were two different menus, a red board with pictures of delicious gourmet-looking meal, and a blue board with really bland, unappetizing food. It hit me that the boards matched the tray. Most of the kids had these blue trays with dull food, while a smaller group had red trays with the good stuff. Since I had a red tray full of tasty food, I walked over to the window area where the other red tray kids were sitting, and I saw Leo there with his friend. The whole vibe felt really strange and exclusionary, but then I saw the guy from the library, the one with the Orion Mystery, walking in with a blue tray. Without really thinking about it, I walked straight over to him and sat down. I tried to strike up a conversation by mentioning that I'd seen him earlier and that he was reading my favorite book. He looked pretty annoyed and interrupted me, asking if he was supposed to return the book or something. I quickly told him that wasn't it at all, and that I just wanted to be friends. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind. It was Leo and his clique. In a really sarcastic tone, Leo told me to stop hanging out with a loser like him. He said a straight-A student like me belonged with their group because we were different, and he pointedly glanced down at the poor quality of food on the boys' blue tray. It was so incredibly stupid. I looked Leo right in the face and told him that I didn't need the color of a plastic tray to tell me who I could talk to, and that I was perfectly capable of making my own decisions. Leo and his friends looked absolutely furious, but the library guy actually cracked a grin. Just then, a girl named Quinn, who had a super cold and intimidating aura, spoke up. She told Leo not to worry and said that I'd soon figure out for myself what losers the blue tray kids were. Then she signaled for her group to leave. Once they were gone, the library guy and I finally started talking for real. He told me his name was John, and I realized that the kids with the blue trays were actually way nicer than the ones with the red one. I asked him what the whole deal was with the colors, and he explained that the school literally divided us into two groups. The reds are the top achievers, so they get the best food, the cleanest tables, and all the perks. The blues are treated like second-class citizens, forced to eat bland food and squeezed into the cramped corners of the room. The whole system seemed so dumb to me. I decided right then that I didn't care about the rules, so I kept hanging out with John and his friend. Of course, Leo and Quinn, who turned out to be the top student and the leader of the Reds, didn't like that one bit. Quinn and her little followers started pulling me aside after class, warning me to stay away from the blues, but I just ignored them. One day, the school made an announcement that they were looking for the next school president. Honestly, I wasn't all that interested at first. I had enough on my plate just trying to navigate the weird social hierarchy here. But my friends Jane and Ellie were so eager for me to sign up. Jane told me that if I became president, I could finally make things fair for everyone. Ellie jumped in too, practically begging me because they needed someone to fight for better food and decent tables and chairs for the blue tray group. They really had a point. It hurt my heart to see them treated like they didn't matter, and I genuinely wanted them to have better things. Plus, I figured being school president would look pretty impressive on my college applications, so I decided to go for it and signed up. I was absolutely blown away by what happened next. I never expected to be so popular. Huge crowds of kids from the blue tray group started gathering around me whenever I walked through the hall. It was so heartening to feel their energy. Jane, Ellie, and the others went all out to support me. They spent hours making these bright, colorful banners and helped me brainstorm a bunch of catchy slogans to win people over. All that hard work really paid off. I could feel the momentum building every single day. And you know what? In the end, I actually made it to the final round. I was so excited I wanted to shout. Now, the only thing standing between me and making a real change was beating Quinn. Just when things were looking up, something absolutely awful happened. I arrived at school the next morning to find a huge crowd of students whispering and gathering near the main entrance. I managed to squeeze my way through the sea of people, and when I saw what they were looking at, my heart just dropped. The principal's favorite portrait, the one that hung right by the hall entrance, was a total mess. It was completely covered in dripping red paint. You could practically smell the wet fumes in the air. While I was standing there in shock, the loudspeakers crackled to life. My stomach did a somersault when I heard the office secretary call out two names, John's and mine. We were being summoned to the principal's office immediately. I looked around, feeling everyone's eyes on me, wondering how on earth I had ended up in the middle of this disaster. When we walked into the principal's office, the air felt heavy. The principal looked at us sternly and asked if we had any idea why we were there. John and I just looked at each other, both of us looking completely confused. The principal sighed and told us that since his portrait had been vandalized, he'd been checking the record. He pointed out that I was the last person to pass the security guard yesterday, and John had been caught on camera climbing over the back gate late at night. He demanded to know what we were both doing at school so late. I felt my heart racing as I explained that I'd realized I couldn't find my math book. With a huge test coming up, I was desperate, so I hurried back to the classroom to try and find it. The principal nodded, his expression softening toward me. But when he turned to John and asked for his story, John just stood there in total silence. That was all the principal needed. He said he knew an exemplary student like me would never do something like that, but a troublemaker like John was a different story. Right then, he told John he was expelled. John finally spoke up, telling him in a cold, sharp voice that he didn't do it, but the principal didn't seem to believe him at all. I couldn't just stand by and let that happen. I pleaded with the principal to reconsider and asked him to give me some time to find the person actually responsible for the mess. He thought about it for a second and then told me that since it was me asking, he'd give me exactly 1 week to prove John's innocence, or as he put it, his guilt. As soon as we stepped out into the hallway, I turned to John and asked him why he was sneaking around the school at that hour. Instead of being grateful, he got all defensive and angry. He told me he just had something to take care of and that it was none of my business. He even told me that if I wanted to believe he was the one who did it, then I should just go ahead and believe it. I was so frustrated. I asked him if he realized that I'd just put my neck on the line to defend him, but he just snapped at me again, saying it was his own private business that I didn't need to know about. Then he just walked off, leaving me standing there. I was still trying to process everything when Quinn, Leo, and their whole group started walking toward me. Leo had this smug look on his face and told me not to waste my time with John because he was going to get expelled sooner or later anyway. He looked at Quinn for backup, but she completely ignored him. Instead, she glared at me with total hatred in her eyes and warned me one last time to stay away from him. Watching them walk away, I started to wonder, why was Leo so incredibly sure that John was a goner? I knew they all hated him, especially Quinn. A thought popped into my head, could they have framed him? I knew there was only one way to find out for sure. I had to start keeping a very close eye on Quinn and see exactly what she was up to when she thought no one was watching. So right after school, I decided to play detective. I followed Quinn all the way down to the harbor, keeping my distance until I could hide behind a large shipping container. The salty air was thick, and I watched her closely. She looked anxious, like she was waiting for someone to show up. Suddenly, a voice right behind me whispered, asking what on earth I was doing. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I had to slam my hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was John. It turns out he'd noticed me tailing Quinn and followed me instead, probably thinking I was about to do something reckless. While we were hiding there, Quinn pulled out her phone to make a call. Almost instantly, John's phone started vibrating in his pocket. I was so confused and asked him why Quinn would be calling him. He just pulled out his phone, showed me the screen where it said Mom was calling, and told me it was just his mother. By the time I turned back to check on Quinn, she had completely vanished. A week went by, and I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. I was sitting alone in the classroom, feeling totally defeated because my investigation hadn't led anywhere. I stood up to leave, lost in my own thoughts, and accidentally knocked a backpack off a nearby desk. Everything spilled out onto the floor. I realized it was Quinn's bag and started frantically picking things up before she caught me. But then my heart stopped. Among her things was a receipt for a can of red paint. Jackpot. I knew right then that she was the one behind the portrait mess. John wasn't in class that day, so after school, I decided to head over to his house to tell him what I found. But when I got there, I saw Quinn standing right outside his front door. This was getting way too suspicious, so I kept my distance and followed them as they walked toward an abandoned house nearby. I managed to get close enough to eavesdrop on their conversation. Quinn sounded really worried. She told John she was afraid I knew something. She mentioned how lucky they were that I hadn't caught them dating at the harbor last time, but she was terrified of what would happen to her presidential campaign if the truth came out now. John tried to calm her down. He told her he knew I'd eventually go back for that math book, and things would have been fine if the school hadn't installed that new camera at the back gate. Then he said something that made my blood boil. He promised her that tomorrow he would just confess to the principal and take the blame, since she hadn't physically done the painting herself anyway. I couldn't believe my ears. It all clicked. They weren't enemies at all. They were secretly dating. John had her number saved as Mom just to keep it a secret. And the worst part, they were willing to let me take the fall or let John get expelled just so Quinn could win the election. It was unbelievable. I couldn't stay hidden a second long. I stepped out right in front of them and told them I'd heard every single word. I made it clear I was going straight to the principal, and then I ran off before either of them could even try to explain. The next morning, I was on my way to the office when I saw Quinn by the wall, slowly tearing down her own election posters. I stopped and asked her why she was doing that. She didn't even look angry. She just quietly said it was okay because she knew she didn't deserve to be president anymore. I was honestly confused. I asked her why she'd play such dirty tricks on me if she didn't want the position more than anything in the world. Quinn looked down at her feet and started explaining everything. She told me that the only reason she was running for president was to finally end the discrimination at our school. She just wanted a place where she didn't have to hide her relationship with John anymore. Honestly, I was floored. I thought I was being the hero by fighting for better food and chairs. But Quinn actually had this big vision to change the entire system. It was actually really impressive. Then she got even more honest. She told me there was one more reason they did what they did. Because I was the principal's favorite student. They were terrified that if I became president, things would actually get worse despite my best intentions. They felt like they were backed into a corner and had no other choice but to try and get me out of the way. She looked me in the eyes and told me how sorry she was for everything. I realized then that I had completely misjudged her. I didn't want John to lose his future by being expelled, so I made a snap decision. I told Quinn that I would be the one to take the blame for the ruined portrait. Quinn looked so ashamed and told me I didn't have to do that because it was all her fault, but I just gave her a small smile to reassure her. I told her not to worry about it because I was positive I'd ace the upcoming city math test. I figured if I won a big prize for the school, there was no way the principal would actually punish me. During recess, I was heading to the principal's office to carry out my plan. But before I could get there, a hand suddenly grabbed me and dragged me into the dark janitor's closet. It was John. He was looking really guilty and told me he just couldn't let me take the fall for something I didn't do. I was about to tell him it was okay, but then I heard voices coming from the science room right next door. It was Quinn and Leo, and their voices were coming through the ventilation hole loud and clear. I stood there frozen as I heard Quinn laughing, calling me a total fool. She bragged about how her plan worked and said there was no way I'd be allowed to run for president now, leaving the victory all for her. Then Leo asked her if she was actually serious about ending the division between the groups, just so she could date her stupid boyfriend in public. Quinn just laughed even harder. She told him she'd fooled everyone, including me and John. She had no intention of changing the rules. Instead, she was going to use her power to make sure every troublemaker got kicked out of school for good. I felt a surge of pure anger. I'd been played again. I looked at John, and my heart broke a little because he looked incredibly disappointed. I leaned in and whispered to him not to worry, because I knew exactly how to get back at them. When election day finally arrived, the whole school was gathered. Quinn got up and gave her speech, and it was exactly what I expected. She talked all about how the red group was the backbone of the school and deserved every single privilege they had. I just stood in the wings with a smirk on my face. She really thought she'd made a fool out of me, didn't she? When it was my turn, I stepped out onto the stage, and I saw her jaw literally drop. Yeah, surprise, Quinn. I never went to the principal. I've never been shy about speaking in front of a crowd, so I felt super confident. I looked out at everyone and told them that we all knew how this school really worked. I talked about the unfairness of being split into two groups and how we were being treated so differently based on a color. I told them that this school should be a safe place for everyone to reach their full potential, not a place for prejudice. Then I made my big promise. If they chose me, I would break that barrier once and for all. No more red or blue trays, just fairness and equality for everyone. The second I finished, the crowd went absolutely wild. It was amazing. I even saw some of the red tray kids cheering for me. You're probably wondering why I didn't just call Quinn out right there on stage, right? Well, I could see her eyes filling with tears as she watched the crowd roar for me. Honestly, seeing her realize she'd lost was a big enough reality check for her. I also caught a glimpse of the principal sneaking away with his head down while the whole school cheered for me. And yeah, in case you couldn't guess, I won. John came up on stage and handed me a beautiful bouquet of flowers right in front of a furious-looking Quinn. I leaned in and whispered to her that I wanted to see her try to get rid of the troublemakers now that I was in charge. She just sneered at me and stormed off the stage. Later on, we found out that Quinn actually went to the principal and confessed to everything before transferring to a different school. As for me, I kept my word. Since becoming president, I've been making some real serious changes to fix the unfairness here. And if you're wondering if John and I became a couple, oh, definitely not. We're just really close friends.